Game and the Game Nashville app.
Stillman and Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Thanks to Superbook Sports, live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. We are at Bridgestone Arena, Predators and Vegas tonight, right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. So we have got a lot to get into today. Boy, people are mad at me today. I don't even know what I did. I don't even know what I did. But
it's always something.
It is always something. Ian's here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
All right, let's get right into it. Todd McShay has a new 2-round mock draft down at ESPN. And I woke up this morning, and I went right to the mock draft, and I said, okay, who do we have the Titans selecting at 11? Not that, again, Todd McShay is the end-all, be-all of who is going to go where or who should take who or anything like that. But I am just kind of fascinated by what ultimately goes down. So I get to the Titans, and every time I do this, I always look at the first couple of picks, and then I just scroll right down to 11. So I go right down to 11 in Todd McShay's draft, and I see Jackson Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. Now, Todd McShay is, I think, starting to kind of maybe smell the coffee on Will Levis a little bit, because he doesn't have Will Levis going in the top 10. And I kept going through this, and I'm like, okay, the Raiders, they would probably take Levis. The Falcons, they don't take Levis. And I'm like, okay, he's going to have the Titans taking Levis at 11. And he doesn't. He has the Titans taking Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State. And he says, quote, "It's not often a team uses a top 20 pick on a wide receiver in back-to-back years. In fact, you have to go back to 2003 and 2005 for the last time when the Lions actually did it 3 times in a row. But there's no arguing that Tennessee needs playmakers even after selecting Treylon Burks last year. The Titans' top 4 wideouts combined for 1,446 yards and 6 touchdowns. A.J. Brown surpassed those numbers on his own. Smith-Njigba barely played in 2022. Of course, we know he had the hamstring injury in the first game of the year. But McShay writes, quote, "He's just 1 year removed from cracking 1,600 receiving yards. He's such a good route runner, creating separation with high-end acceleration out of his breaks and hauling in passes with soft hands. He'd be an immediate favorite for quarterback Ryan Tannehill." Speaking of Tannehill, he writes that he says, "I wouldn't rule out the Titans drafting Will Levis as the future franchise signal caller, especially since Malik Willis struggled in his rookie year, i.e. Malik stinks." And I think Ohio State tackle Paris Johnson Jr. could make a lot of sense too. Now, he has Levis. He has Tampa Bay making a trade with New England to move up and take Will Levis. So he's got Jackson Smith-Njigba at 11. So then I scroll all the way down, and I'm just hitting my thumb to scroll all the way down to get to 41. I'm like, all right, who are they going to take at 41? Because they got to go offensive line at 41, right? Like, even if it's a tackle and you move Dillard or you move Petit Ferrer inside, or maybe it's a guard or maybe it's a center, but you got to go offensive line. He has Drew Sanders, the inside linebacker at Arkansas, with the 41st pick in the draft. McShay writes, quote, "On our first inside linebacker is finally off the board. Tennessee signed Azeez Al-Shire to replace David Long Jr., but Sanders does a little bit of everything. He had 111 tackles, 9.5 sacks, 16 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, 10 run stops, and an interception last season. His versatility, instincts, and burst would be welcomed on a defense that gave up 5.4 yards per play last season, 19th in the NFL." So those are the 2 guys in the first 2 round, McShay. Wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba, and inside linebacker Drew Sanders. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Drew Sanders started his career at Alabama and transferred to Arkansas. And I watched a lot of Arkansas football this year. Drew Sanders is not bad. Let me say this. I hate both picks. How these guys are going to play when you see them in college and then you see them in the pros. I thought Matt Leinart, from what we saw at USC, I thought he was going to be a superstar in the NFL. And Matt Leinart never made it. And so I know, hey, sometimes you think you love a guy and then you see him play and they end up not being that good. Mike Williams at USC, I thought he was going to be an all-star. Maurice Clarett, I thought he was incredible. So I see guys in college, and I get it. And I booed the pick when the Titans drafted Chris Johnson. I was like, they don't need a running back. They've got Lindale White and Chris Henry. So we can all be
Did
wrong.
you actually boo?
I mean, I was on the bus. We were playing high school baseball at the time. And somebody said, the Titans took Chris Johnson. And I was like, why? Why? All this guy did was run fast at the combine. And, for about a decade there, Chris Johnson was the best player the team had. So, again, what the hell do we know? But here's why I hate both picks. Number one, I hate Smith and Jigba at 11. Sure, talent-wise, he's probably the best receiver in this draft. And I have complained about wide receiver and the lack of somebody, a warm body, being available to be your number 2 receiver this year. So you would say he's the best receiver, he's got the most talent, he's fast, which you don't have. I mean, he's what you need, right? So why would you not want to take him? And I just don't think this team can afford to take a guy who just missed the entire last season with a hamstring injury. I mean, Mike Vrabel's sitting up there naming guys out by name because, they've got soft tissue injuries. And knock on wood, Kevin Byard's never had a hamstring, but Christian Fulton, David Long, we can't count on them because they've got hamstrings. And now you're going to draft Jackson Smith and Jigba with the 11th overall pick when he just lost an entire season because of the hamstring? I think in other organizations in this spot with the 11th pick, they could take Smith and Jigba. And they could say 2 years ago, he was that dude at Ohio State, and it was a one-year thing, and he's over the injury, and he's going to be great for us. This team, after all the injuries, after all the moves in free agency about, we can't bring this guy back because he's always hurt. After all the complaining, they brought in new turf because that's supposed to help with the injuries, and then you're going to draft a guy with the 11th overall pick who didn't play last year? A guy who opted out of the college football playoff because, I want to make sure my hamstring's okay. A guy who did everything at the combine, but he didn't run the 40? And you're going to draft him at 11? You can't take that risk. You can't fire the last guy because, he took too many injured players. And then go draft Jackson Smith and Jigba with the 11th overall pick. So I hated that. Secondly, Drew Sanders at 41 from Arkansas. And I watched a lot of Arkansas, and I like Drew Sanders. He's the best player on that defense. And I like Drew Sanders. But when I look at McShay's mock and the way it breaks, there is a huge run on the offensive lineman right around that spot, right around that pick. In fact, the next pick is Joe Tipperman. Again, I don't know who any of these people are, but, you'd have to talk to TD about these individual players and who they are and what they do and everything else. But let's just start at 39. 39, Carolina takes Osiris Torres, a guard out of Florida. Then 42, the Jets take Joe Tipman, a center out of Wisconsin. At 47, Washington goes John Michael Schmitz, a center out of Minnesota. Then you've got Anton Harrison, an offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. DeJuan Jones, an offensive tackle out of Ohio State. Steve Avila, a center guard from TCU. All go within about 10 or 11 picks of that pick at 41. Now, I hate drafting for need. But the Titans have backed themselves into a corner at this point where they have to go offensive line semi-early in this draft. They cannot sit back and just say, we'll let the left guard figure itself out. That's what they did last year. And when they did that last year, they got stuck with Aaron Brewer and Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, and the offensive line was an unmitigated disaster. You all hated Dennis Daly. You want to know why they ended up with Dennis Daly? Because they didn't tender David Quessenberry a contract, and they figured, we'll just figure it out somewhere along the way. And that's how you end up with Dennis Daly. So this team cannot draft, again, Drew Sanders, and I like him. I watched Arkansas, not bad. Drew Sanders might be the next Ray Lewis. I don't think he's going to, but he might be. And in 4 years, nobody will remember what you needed when you picked at 41 if you picked the next Ray Lewis. But this team has backed themselves into a corner where they have got to go offensive line early in this draft. And if they're going to go wide receiver at 11 with Smith and Jigba, which, again, I also hate, if they're going to go 11 with Smith and Jigba, then they've got to go offensive line at 41. I mean, right now, your offensive line is a lot of hoping and praying. Your left tackle was a backup. Okay? It's not like your left tackle was in the Pro Bowl last year. He was a backup. He'd been a backup for 4 years. So you got a backup at left tackle you're hoping can start. That's hoping and praying. You don't have a left guard. Your center is 277 pounds, which is not big enough in the NFL. Your right guard was a backup last year at San Francisco. So I've got a backup at left tackle. I've got a backup at right guard. I've got a center who technically started last year but is too small to play in the NFL. And deep down inside, I think we all probably know he is a backup. And you've got Petit Ferrer at right tackle, who quite frankly wasn't very good last year. And I got no left guard. You have to go offensive line early. And to see the run on the offensive linemen, and again, I don't know any of these guys from a jar of Vicks. I don't know anything about Steve Avila. You would need to talk to TD about that. And he's probably watched all the tape on all these guys, and he would be able to tell you, you know, John Michael Schmitz does this, and Joe Tipman from Wisconsin does that, and he would know more than I would. But you have to get offensive linemen. You need bodies. And right now, your offensive line is essentially what your offensive line was last year. Bull crap. You can't go into next year saying, oh, you know, we'll figure it out on the offensive line. You did that last year, and that's why part of the reason you fired your general manager, because he whiffed at right tackle on Isaiah Wilson, and he whiffed at right tackle on Dylan Radins. That's why you had to trade for Dennis Daly, because your offensive line was so bad last year in training camp. I remember they played the Arizona in the third preseason game, and we were out at training camp like the next day. On that Monday, they played on a Saturday, and then we were out there on a Monday, and it was so uncomfortable because Caroline and I were sitting right there by the offensive lineman, and all we were doing was talking about how the offensive linemen stink. But that's why they traded for Dennis Daly. So if you're going to take an inside linebacker, a non-premium position, with the 41st pick in the draft, and then you say, well, we're just going to figure out offensive line, then you're going to be terrible this year. And I don't like the fact that the Titans have backed themselves into a corner where they're going to have to go offensive line early in this draft. But it is what it is. So, again, a mock draft is a mock draft. You know, like a mock draft, it is absolutely not gospel. And this is Todd McShay's opinion. And Todd McShay's opinion, you know, I mean, what does that mean to me? But this morning, I saw Jackson Smith-Njigba, the injured wide receiver at Ohio State, after the year of injuries, the promise that we'll do everything in our power not to get hurt again in the future, and then you're going to take the guy with a bad hamstring. And then an inside linebacker at 41, and I'm thinking, who's going to play offensive line for this team this year? So that's where we're at. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025. There's no way they actually do that, right? Like, they have to go. They have to go offensive line in the first 2 rounds this year, right?
I mean, it feels like you have to pick one of them offensive line.
With either the 11th or the 41st pick.
You would think so.
One of them's got to be offensive line. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get your reaction to that. 615-737-1025. Plus, there are a lot of options for the Titans. If, let's just say, McShay's mock draft is right, there are a lot of different options with the 11th pick, including options that might decide the future of the franchise. We'll get to that coming up. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in today on the program. Again, we are live at Bridgestone Arena. Come on out tonight for the game. And let me just say, Preds fans, hang out tonight before the Preds game at the Superbook Lounge and Landshark Bar and Grill, Margaritaville on Broadway with 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Place your bets with Superbook and enjoy great food and drink specials. Plus, enter for a chance to win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game.
The college football season never stops. ESPN college football analyst Trevor Manich joins Stillman and Company every Tuesday at 4:30.
They've got to do what Nick Saban in Alabama has done so successfully over the last 10 years.
Presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics on Nashville's best sports talk, 102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It's the first day of the first grade, and she found a new best friend. It's a laid-back Sunday afternoon you wish would never end. The homemade taste of Bluebell and good friends gathered round. The good old days are being made right now.
Have you noticed that most ice creams now come in smaller cartons? Not Bluebell. We're still making a full half-gallon and a full pint of tasty goodness. Bluebell wouldn't have it any other way.
The good old days are being made right now. The good old days are being made right now.
Look for Bluebell ice cream at Publix, where shopping is a pleasure.
What if you could be credit card debt-free in 10 days and save as much as $1,000 a month? Loan Pronto's all-new Express Equity Line of Credit program is just what you need. Hey, Willie Donick here. You don't have to do a full home refi. You can tap a small portion of the equity you have and enjoy a super low monthly payment. With Loan Pronto's Express Equity Credit Line, you can close in 7 to 10 days. And a $50,000 loan would only cost you around $400 a month. Use that money to pay off high-interest credit cards or do a home improvement. You can access up to 90% of your home's equity, and 9 out of 10 homeowners won't even need an appraisal. Even if you did a total refi recently or just bought your home, you can tap the equity with this fast, easy program. Stop the madness and say no to 24% interest fees. Call Loan Pronto today. 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval.
Ad paid for by Anthem Tax Services. Attention, if you or your business is behind in filing your tax returns, or if you owe over $10,000 in back taxes to the IRS, please listen carefully. The IRS does not joke around and will not stop their collection efforts. If you're tired of the IRS letters, levies, liens, or wage garnishments and would like to get a fresh start, we can help. Due to the financial hardships in the country, the IRS is making it easier than ever to settle tax problems for those who owe more than $10,000. We can help settle your delinquent tax problems, end all collections, and may even reduce your back taxes significantly. Even if you can't afford to pay your back taxes, you can still get the help you need. We've helped thousands of taxpayers just like you, but you must call 800-240-6345 today to stop your tax problem from getting worse. The information is free and the help is real. Call 800-240-6345. That's 800-240-6345. Again, 800-240-6345.
Anyone want to tell me what happened?
Did you miss any of today's show?
It's okay. It's fine. Don't worry.
Subscribe to the Stillman and Company podcast on Apple, Spotify, and other podcast platforms, or by going to thegamenashville.com.
All right, I'll give it a shot.
You're listening to Stillman and Company, presented by TriStar Moving on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
There is some buzz around the league about Will Levis and the Colts at number 4 overall. I texted with UK coach Mark Stoops, who told me that the Colts have done their homework on Levis and they had a presence at his pro day. So he's a bit of a polarizing prospect because when you talk to teams, they say he's a pretty serious guy as far as his demeanor. How's he going to fit in with certain teams? But the ability is certainly there. I've talked to several teams now who think the Colts are at least seriously considering taking Levis in that spot, and he fits the prototype for what they've always liked in a quarterback, big-bodied, sturdy guy in the pocket.
There you go. That was Jeremy Fowler on ESPN saying, hey, could Indy sit at 4 if somebody jumps up to 3 with Arizona and takes Anthony Richardson? Could somebody, could Indy sit there at 4 and say, okay, fine, we're going to take Will Levis? And I said yesterday on the show, that's a smokescreen. Indianapolis is going to tell people, oh, yeah, we like all 4 guys. But really what they don't want to do is they don't want to pay Arizona to move up to 3 to draft Richardson so that they don't get stuck with Will Levis. Now, Todd McShay's latest mock draft has Indianapolis trading up to 3 and drafting Anthony Richardson because Indianapolis isn't going to want to, take the chance on somebody else jumping them and taking the quarterback that they like. So then I'm thinking, okay, where's Levis going to go? Because I do believe that Arizona wants Will Anderson Jr., so they're going to take him at 4. So now there's Seattle at 5. Well, they've got Geno Smith, but they can also take a quarterback. And Todd has Jalen Carter out of Georgia. Okay? Then Detroit, they could take a quarterback at 6. Is Will Levis going to be better than Jared Goff? I don't think he's going to be. That's just my opinion. Could be wrong. They've got Tyree Wilson, Texas Tech at 6. The Raiders need a quarterback. Devin Witherspoon, corner Illinois at 7. Atlanta, Arthur. They've got Desmond Ridder, but is Desmond Ridder really that dude? Christian Gonzalez, corner out of Oregon at 8. Peter Skoronski to the Bears at 9 out of Northwestern. Luke Van Ness, a defensive end from Iowa, to Philadelphia at 10. Titans, could they go quarterback? No, they go Smith and Jigba. Houston doesn't need a quarterback because they go quarterback at 2. The Jets don't need a quarterback because they've got Aaron Rodgers. And so then finally Will Levis goes with the 14th overall pick in a Tampa Bay trade up with New England to take Will Levis. Hendon Hooker, meanwhile, goes in the first round of the draft at 23, according to Todd McShay, to the Vikings. So here's the thing. The Titans are going to be sitting there at 11, right? And if Will Levis is on the board, and if Hendon Hooker is on the board, and you think one of those 2 guys are a franchise quarterback, don't you have to take them? I know that the talk was, and TD said that the Titans like C.J. Stroud. Well, the Titans are not going to get C.J. Stroud. I think Carolina traded up to number 1 in order to draft C.J. Stroud. And so in a perfect world, would it be great if you could get your guy? Sure. But you're sitting there at 11, and Paris Johnson is still on the board, and, some of these guys that really have a lot of potential are still on the board. The trade down is an option. Could you trade down, get some more picks, and be able to turn that around and, get a receiver later in the first and then get some offensive line help and really fix it around the infrastructure around your new quarterback? The one thing I would say for Rand Carthon is this. If you think either guy is a franchise quarterback, you have to take him. And you guys know me. You guys know that I think Tannehill is good enough to be able to do this for this upcoming season. But Tannehill's 35 years old. This isn't going to be a long-term thing with Tannehill. Even though I think that Tannehill right now is probably better than Levis. Now, I'm not of the belief that Will Levis is a franchise quarterback. The fact that he didn't play well last year. When I saw Bruce Feldman talk to a coach who said that Will Levis was seeing ghosts last year, that concerns me. He's got the size. I heard Rick Spielman, the former Vikings general manager, he was saying that Will Levis is so yoked that he doesn't think he can make the touch throws in the NFL, or is concerned that he wouldn't be able to make the touch throws. Now, Hooker, when we talk about Hooker, I have to ask the question as to what do we define by franchise quarterback? Joe covered both guys in college, Hendon Hooker and Kirk Cousins, and he thinks they're very similar. Now, I'll say this. Cousins' biggest problem, well, you guys remember what Pac-Man said at the Super Bowl on this show. Cousins can make every throw. He just doesn't have the testicular fortitude in order to make the big throws in the big games. I don't think Hooker has that problem. In fact, I feel very confident after watching Hooker this last year at Tennessee in the big games to know that, hey, if there's a throw in a big moment that needs to be made, I trust Hendon Hooker can do it. And so people will say, well, they should trade down and take Hendon Hooker. But if you think Hendon Hooker is a franchise quarterback, or you think Will Levis is a franchise quarterback, and they're there at 11, I think you have to take them with that pick. Because if you think they're a franchise quarterback, what are the chances that somebody behind you also thinks they're a franchise quarterback? Chances are probably pretty good that they think that somebody behind you thinks that person's a franchise quarterback. So let's say you trade down because you're going to target Hendon Hooker. Well, you trade down to 20. Well, now everybody in the back end of the first round can get ahead of you. Teams that have second-round picks can move up and leverage next year picks to be able to take him. And if you think he's a franchise quarterback and you pass on him with the 11th overall pick, you may not be able to get him. And then who's your quarterback next year? So if you think these two guys are franchise quarterbacks, and again, in Todd McShay's mock draft, and I've said I would not trade up to the number 3 pick, as was discussed yesterday. I would not do that. But if you're sitting there at 11 and you know you need help at offensive line and you know you need help at receiver and you've got depth issues everywhere, I think there would be a feeling to say, well, Paris Johnson is rated higher on our draft board than Will Levis is. But that's not the question. The question is, do you think Will Levis is a franchise quarterback? And I'm fine with waiting at 11 and making the pick as opposed to trading up. Because if you trade up, you're going to trade away your second-round pick, your first-round pick next year, your second-round pick next year, and then how are you going to help your young quarterback? Well, part of the reason why the Chicago Bears made the trade with Carolina was because, okay, now we get a receiver to help the young quarterback in DJ Moore. Now we get an offensive lineman with the 9th pick to be able to help out Justin Fields. You know, they're going to help out their young quarterback. Well, I don't want to throw the young quarterback into the fire and then not have any picks to be able to help him. And then 3 years in, the young quarterback, after 2 years of getting his teeth kicked in, or maybe 1 year behind Tannehill, and then a year of getting his teeth kicked in, now the young quarterback has his arms in the air saying, what are you doing to help me? And you're not going to have any ammunition to be able to help him because you traded all of it away to move up to number 3 and take him. So I'm against that. But sitting there at 11, you'll have 41 to be able to help out your young quarterback. You'll have your 3rd round pick to be able to help out your young quarterback. You'll have your 1st round pick next year to be able to help out your young quarterback. That's a different scenario. So it's not about, is Hendon Hooker worth the 11th pick? Because everybody's mocking him down except for Mike Tannenbaum. Everybody's mocking him down at 23 and 27 and in the 2nd round. That doesn't matter. Do you think he's a franchise quarterback? Do you think Will Levis is a franchise quarterback? That's the question. And honestly, I don't know the answer. I lean no on Levis. Hooker, I'm torn on because I think he checks all the boxes, except was he a product of Josh Heupel's offense? Or was Josh Heupel's success because of Hooker? And I don't know the answer to that. Like, that's something that we are going to learn down the road, one way or another. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your phones on this, 615-737-1025. Also, the 33rd team, it's a new football website. They got a bunch of old football guys that work for them. They have a mock draft, and the guy who makes the mock draft is a former scouting director, I think, for the Eagles. So make of that what you will. But they have the Titans making a move in the 1st round that if it goes down on draft night, you are going to see and hear a Jared Stillman that you have never seen or heard before. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Preds fans, do not miss tomorrow night's Smashville Live at Brew House South in Cool Springs starting at 6 o'clock. See your Predator star players up close and personal, plus get autographs and pictures. The Preds player guests tomorrow night are Mark Jankowski and Philip Tomasino. Smashville Live is brought to you by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, Little Harpeth Beer, Superbook Sports, and Dulce Vita Tequila. Pure and simple.
Want a chance to win tickets to an upcoming Preds game?
Yes.
Tune in to Robbie and Rexrode every weekday Preds game day at 8:45 for Preds Pick to Click. Guess a goal scorer and win.
I'll take Roman Yost. Matt Duchesne.
Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Visit tjandersonhomes.com to see why they are referred so often. And by Superbook Sports, voted #1 sportsbook in Vegas. Download their app today.
Preds Pick to Click.
We are 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
Bar Lines in the Omni Nashville Hotel.
Hey Nashville, it's Chef Phillip at Bar Lines at the Omni Hotel. Come try our new hot dog burn ends. Nathan's all beef hot dogs smoked over pecan wood, tossed in honey sriracha barbecue, topped with a cool crema and crisp spring onions. One of my favorites.
Attending an event downtown? Dine at Bar Lines in the Omni Nashville Hotel.
The team at Mercedes-Benz of Music City have done it again. Here's Edwin Vickery to explain.
4-time recipient of Best of the Best. Less than 10% of the dealers in the country receive this award. How did you do it? We say culture eats strategy for lunch, because we can strategize all we want, but unless you have the right culture and chemistry in the dealership, it will not work.
Live the dream at Mercedes-Benz of Music City, mbofmc.com.
Houston Clinic Orthopedics at TriStar Stonecrest in Smyrna offers world-class orthopedic care. The doctors at this location specialize in hand, knee, shoulder, hip, foot, ankle, and spine. Make better use of your time at Houston Clinic Orthopedics with on-site diagnostics and testing, timely appointments, and easy access to the facility. Get back to enjoying life. Schedule your appointment online at tn.houston.com. Houston Clinic Orthopedics at TriStar Stonecrest in Smyrna. When experience matters, trust Houston Clinic Orthopedics.
Coration CBD products. Coration began as our family's mission to provide the Nashville community with locally and organically sourced CBD products. We are passionate about providing high-quality CBD products for everyday use. Tinctures, topicals, and pet products too. We are a Pick 10 company. Our hemp is organically grown and produced in Nashville, Tennessee from sustainably sourced non-GMO genetics. All of our products are lab tested. Find all of our products at CorationCompany.com.
This is Jim Mitchell at Mr. Transmission in Madison. Many of you care about a cure for cystic fibrosis. I care a lot and support the Saturday, May 6th golf tournament at Hendersonville's beautiful Country Hill Golf Course. It's the CureForOurFriends.org 9th annual golf tournament for cystic fibrosis. Tee off at 7:30 a.m. and 1 p.m. on May the 6th. Lots of prizes and sports stars, lunch and dinner provided for each tee time. Sign up at CureForOurFriends.org. That's CureForOurFriends.org.
Nashville Sounds Baseball lives on 94.9 The Fan. Catch every pitch.
Swing and a miss, strike three.
Every hit.
That's a base hit.
Every run.
Looking up, it's gone.
On your home for Sounds Baseball. 94.9 The Fan and The Fan app.
Hey, this is Philip Forsberg. You're listening to Nashville's best sports talk, ESPN.
To keep an eye on that's exploring this and looking into this. Again, this is just people around the league who said do not sleep on numerous